Welcome to the Art Studio Insights podcast, where we demystify the creative process and exchange ideas with career-minded artists. We are your hosts, Adriana Amay and
Jackie Sanders. We are two emerging artists sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our journey. So if you are not already, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you will be notified when we launch new episodes every week.
Today we are celebrating our 30th episode. And we are going to be talking about the creative business path that we have worked on together. This is a PDF resource we did for the Level Up artists in our membership. And as part of celebrating our 30th episode, we're going to be sharing with you a preview version of this resource because we actually think it's kind of an important one if you are a career-minded artist.
Yeah, exactly. And so much of what we talk about on the podcast talks about the career-minded artist ideas that we're discussing, but really in the Level Up Artist monthly membership that we host with amazing, talented artists, we dive really into what are those core action items? What are those behind the scenes look into things that we're doing and other artists are doing? Because realistically, being a career-minded artist means that you can take your career in any direction. But really, in order to establish where you want to go, you first have to establish where you are right now, because there's so many different directions you can go. And so really having this as a resource to base your goals off of and reverse engineer them, we have found and have been told has been helpful with all of our Level Up artists. So we wanted to share it with you guys as well. Just a little preview version of what the members get in our monthly membership.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really cool, like Jackie was mentioning, regardless of what route you go, maybe you do pet portraits, maybe you do live paintings, doesn't matter. There's different areas from a business perspective that we all go through in common. So that's what we've been working on through the creative business path. So whether you are an enthusiast hobbyist, you're an emerging artist, you consider yourself intermediate, established, or even boss level, we figured this could be helpful for you just to kind of see where you land on the map. No judgment, just to kind of get a rough idea of where you're at and how to move over to the next step. So we're going to be diving into the artist path. But first, a shout out to today's podcast sponsor.
So officially, today's episode is brought to you by the Level Up Artist community. So this is a monthly membership that we've already mentioned, but it is a membership that will really transform your art business and help you level up through access to community, goal-driven creatives, advice from industry professionals, and course modules, including the creative business path, that cover everything from social media to technology to sustainable studio practices, all which are needed to create a fine art business. So inside the monthly membership, we focus on what really matters. So including practical education, honest advice, and the resources that you need to level up your creative practice while staying true to the artist that you were meant to be. So enrollment will open a couple of times a year. So if you're interested in joining us, you can head on over to levelupartist.com and learn more about signing up to where you can be alerted when enrollment reopens.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Jackie, and giving our listeners kind of a quick introduction if they haven't heard about the artist group that we run. But let's go back into the creative business path here for a moment. So obviously, like Jackie mentioned, we have a membership for artists, and that's where we kind of go into more of a deep dive of all the different levels. But to give you a rough idea of what we're working with here, you can think of it, amongst other things, as a checklist of characteristics in your business that can help you identify where you are. And we generally look at it or break it down into 5 different sections of every business, right? To kind of help make it a little bit more digestible, because businesses definitely have, it's like an octopus with unlimited tentacles, if you will. So we're trying to like narrow down a little bit, make it a little bit more manageable. So We divide the information, if you will, into your process, or tasks associated, I should say, with your process and or studio practice. Sustainability, stay sane is one of the things we focus on. The general business, we have marketing and technology, which we do lump those two together because in this day and age, they tend to be pretty tied to each other. And the part that some folks' eyes gloss over at even the mention of financials. If you're running this as a business, money is part of the conversation. So that's, we kind of go into each of those different areas and kind of dive into some of the tasks and kind of checklist items associated with each of them. And then also we highlight different books that we think that are a good match for each of the different stages as an artist. But Jackie, will you kind of help us out with what the 5 different levels of artists are, based on what we've put together?
Yeah. So when talking to all the amazing, talented artists around us in our immediate community and virtual community, we really were able to see a clear breakdown within 5 levels of an artist's career. And like we said earlier, from a standpoint of where their career is going, they have many different directions. But realistically, most people start as an art enthusiast or hobbyist. So this can be described as you're experimenting with different mediums and styles. You're curious about selling art, but maybe you haven't started yet. This is the enthusiast hobbyist phase. Then an evolution after that is where you become an emerging artist. So maybe you've sold a few pieces, you've been in a few exhibitions, whether a group exhibition or your first solo, and you're really trying to narrow down what your style is in order to become a consistent business that you can build off of. So the 3rd level after that, we consider intermediate. So this is where your sales really start becoming consistent. You start to have a cohesive body of work. You start building a brand, and also the awareness of you and your art business starts rising as you establish yourself in the immediate community and abroad. So after that, we have established. So this is where you have multiple streams of income, and you're really implementing new business strategies and taking things very strategically. So rather than selling a piece here and there, you have these systems in place that you can really build off of. And then that brings us to the final level, which is boss level, which is where you are delegating tasks. You have solo exhibitions consistently, you have consistent sales, and really a sizable audience and a consistent large mailing list. So this is really at the point where you are growing as a company, if you were to think of it in traditional business aspects, and really being the boss of your art business. So like Adriana was saying, within each of those 5 levels, we break down all of those checklist items, your process, sustainability, business practices, marketing and technology, and finances, to what those mean within these 5 levels, as you will see in the PDF we are providing with today's episode, because realistically, that is what's really important in identifying where you are.
Absolutely. And I mean, you could think almost, I think most of you have heard about the hero's journey and kind of like you go through some obstacles, you defeat them and whatnot in many ways as you craft your own path as an artist, because there is no set path. You're carving your own way in the world, so to speak. Although you're not an island, you're on this journey with others too, right? But as you find your place in the art world, if you will, then there's going to be additional complexities and difficulties as you progress through this journey. So that's part of why we think it's so important to be able to break down each of these levels, because if you're already looking at boss level but you're still at the emerging level, there's such a huge gap, right? So it might make it a little bit harder to kind of grasp. So what we do is we look at not just the different levels as an artist, but we also look at different levels within each of the categories that we were talking about. So for example, your process and your artwork may be more of an intermediate level, right? So you do have a consistent studio
Right.
practice and your artwork is amazing and all those things. But perhaps on the general business side of things, the business structure is inconsistent and maybe it's more at the hobbyist level. There's not even like you may have great artwork and not a way to take payment. Like, whoops,
Right.
I only take cash. That's probably not going to work. Um, so, that's why we think it's so important, to kind of look at it. We have the macro view of like, where are you at? But then inside each of these subcategories, kind of help you identify where you are. So, for example, on each of these categories, the goal is to be at around the same level. You kind of want to be boss level on everything from sustainability and, staying healthy, in all ways, in many
Yep.
different ways of your life as an artist and a person, right? But then also on the financials, you want to be a boss level. Like you don't want those gaps, right? Because if you do have big gaps in between all these different areas, your business and it's just going to be stuck right at a lower level than it could be. Your sales and business growth aren't necessarily going to be scalable. Like it's going to limit your growth. And we're not saying everybody wants to be like a giant art empire situation. That's not the point. Boss level is going to represent many different things to different artists, but you don't want there to be too much of a gap between all the different areas of your art practice and business. Again, this is, of course, we're talking to the career business minded folks out there. So the solution to
Exactly.
this, is essentially to focus on your areas of improvement once you've identified, right, where those gaps are, and or find a business partner or even an assistant that can help you with it. So there is a way. Maybe financials are not your strong suit. That is okay. That happens. But once you're able to identify where those areas of improvement are, then you can, shift gears and figure out how to solve
Yeah.
for them.
Exactly. Because realistically, the ultimate goal is, like we said earlier, like really to establish where you are so that you know what the proper action items are to take you where you need to go. Because if you think that you're at a level, let's say 3, and you're pushing for level 4, maybe through this exercise you realize a certain skill is at a 1 or a 2, and that's why you keep getting frustrated, why you're not hitting certain points. And so really using knowledge as power, as cheesy and cliche as that is. And that is one thing that we talk about a lot within the Level Up Artist community. So using this resource so that you can establish where you are, and then having a community that you can use to keep you accountable for what those long-term goals are. So like we said, the full entire PDF with resources and item breakdowns and book resources is part of our Level Up Artist membership. But we did want to provide a preview for you. So if you go to either one of our blogs that we talk about at the end of every podcast episode, you can download the preview version of the Level Up Artist Creative Business Path and really use it to determine where you are in order to grow towards your next step.
Yep. And like Jackie mentioned, if you'd like the full version and want to learn more about the artist community that we've run, you can go over to levelupartist.com, sign up to be notified when we open. And you'll gain access to our amazing community of super talented and very, very generous artists that love to share their knowledge. And you also get the full content, including the full version of the Creative Business Path document. But with that, we're going to wrap it up for today. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation.
As always, both of our blogs will be linked in the show notes where you can find the preview PDF, as well as episode notes, resources, and links to all of our other podcast episodes.
And if you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share what you have learned, maybe share your feedback on the preview version of the Creative Business Path, you can follow us on social media. I'm at May Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Standard Studio on all platforms. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.